lives in Philly. She played at Princeton. Also, 2 of the world's top 32 also call Philly home. So we have like I got to look at me. This is according to Philly Mag. So I got to shout out. I didn't know. I'm learning all of these squash connections I had no idea existed.
The other thing that's really important to know about squash is the goggles.
Oh.
They got to wear these goggles. And it's a look, man. Like it's,
a goggle sport.
I think you have to have a lot of confidence to rock the goggles as part of your sport. And so I have a lot of respect for the squash goggles.
Yeah, I didn't even know that, but
sure
the
what
courts
it's
are very
protecting
cool.
against.
The
Yeah.
courts look cool too.
Yeah.
So, and I have to go check out this Arlen Specter Squash Center. I mean, it's right on Drexel's campus.
Maybe you and I will play a game. How about
Maybe,
that? Here's one thing that can't be squashed. The attraction to alternative medicine.
That's blowing up.
It seems to be growing in this country, perhaps to be further inspired by the support of HHS Secretary RFK Jr. So the main meat of the show, inside the squash gourd today, the meat of the show is going to be about alternative medicine. We want to know, do you use it?
Yeah.
Why do you think it's become more popular? Give us a call, 888-477-9499. You can also email studio2@whyy.org. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, hey, drop a comment right there in the chat. We'll be right back on Studio 2. And welcome back to Studio 2. I'm Avi Wolfman-Aaron.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. Americans are sick of the medical establishment. Okay, maybe not all Americans, but a growing number seek alternative cures and supplements, and now they have a champion inside the White House.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pledged to, quote, end the war against alternative medicine. That could be a boon to America's wellness industry, which is already easily the world's largest. So are we headed toward a world of peptides in every pot, vitamins in every vessel, chelation therapy in every container?
We will ask the experts. With us in studio is Dr. Daniel Monti, founding director and CEO of the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at Jefferson Health. He started the first ever department of integrative medicine at Thomas Jefferson University. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Monti. Yes. And joining us via Zoom is journalist Matthew Hungolt-Hetling. He's the author of If It Sounds Like a Quack, A Journey to the Fringes of American Medicine. Matt, welcome to Studio 2.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here.
Can I just say, best Zoom background so far. If you're on YouTube, you got to check it out.
His hair is blowing in the wind. I love it.
Beautiful. Question for you out there listening. Do you use alternative medicine? Why do you think it's become so popular? Give us a call, 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org if you're on YouTube, or on Facebook. Drop a comment right there in the chat.
So, more Americans are rejecting conventional medicine. They're turning to supplements, wellness influencers, and experimental treatment. So I want to hear from both of you. What's behind this rising distrust and why now? And Matt, we'll start with you, and then Dan, we'll have you comment as well.
Yeah, well, the breakdown in institutional trust has been happening in this country for decades and decades. And what I think is really unique about the last 20 years is that we've sort of hit this tipping point where we've sort of kicked so many people out of the tent that they've formed their own tent, and it is bigger than the folks who remain inside that tent. And I think more specifically, yeah, we've had some failures of the healthcare industry. We have more doctors per capita in Kazakhstan globally than we have in Mississippi. And that's a problem. So access is a problem for many people in many places. And we sort of drive people out of the system. And another big change that's happened is in the 1990s. If I could tell you in just 30 seconds, we changed the laws regarding supplements and the supplement industry. And we made it a much more profitable product. And before that, the wellness industry was very much sort of decommodified. All natural living meant living close to the earth in various ways and sort of opting out of our societal systems. But now, what is really different is that lax loosening of regulations has created a financial juggernaut in the wellness and supplement industry. And so, what we're seeing now is just a huge battle between the wellness industry and the healthcare industry over the money that we spend on our health. And Americans are caught in the middle of that.
So it's a perfect storm. And you've said so many things, Matt. We're going to circle back to that. And so, Dan, I wanted to get your take on that.
I think also caught in the middle are the physicians themselves. So where conventional medicine really shines is in acute care problems, putting out fires, a raging strep throat, a broken bone, things that have a standardized protocol and that really work well. And these are where the success stories happen in medicine every day. But there are a large group of people who have unmet needs in this medical model. There's chronic healthcare issues. There's vaguer medical complaints that people have that aren't so well addressed by that medical model. And this is where there's this opportunity for physicians to know more about wellness. And that's part of what our academic department is all about, and lifestyle and how those things affect well-being, health outcomes. But it's also an opportunity for some of the things that we see going on where people get preyed upon in social media and other things. Here is the new cure for if you're fatigued, or you need to quote unquote detox, or if you're having insomnia, versus looking at it from a biopsychosocial spiritual perspective, which is what we do in a true integrative medicine model.
Let me read this comment from David on Facebook, who says, it may be more popular, talking about alternative medicine, due to the high costs and surprise bills of traditional healthcare. Many Americans face sky-high medical bills, even with insurance. Routine care can be financially ruinous. No one should be bankrupt due to healthcare. It's time for universal healthcare and making healthcare not for profit. I want to kick that back to you, Dan. So when we look at the causes, what's driving people away from what we've termed traditional medicine, maybe Western medicine in some people's nomenclature? What do you see as the main causes? Is it cost? Is it the bedside manner of doctors? Is it just the fact that we can't cure everything and people have this expectation that we can? What do you see as like the drivers here?
So those are all drivers, and those are all known drivers. So access is a problem, as previously stated. We happen to live in an area where there's pretty good access, but there's a lot of areas around the country where there just isn't good access. And so then people look for their own solutions, their own cures for problems that a physician might be able to easily help them with. So access is an issue. Cost, if you don't have good insurance or your copay is really high, can I Google this to see if there's something I can come up with on the internet that might fix this for me so I don't have to pay that $7,500 copay if I go into urgent care or wherever else I might, get my care?
I also want to ask about this rising use of supplements and herbal remedies, because I think it goes hand in hand, Matt, with this whole distrust that's rising over, just traditional medicine generally. A 2024 survey by the Council for Responsible Nutrition found that as many as 3 in 4 adults 18 and older take supplements. Almost 4 in 5 users said they prefer supplements to prescription or even over-the-counter medications. How do you tie those two things together? Because a lot of folks, they've told me that they want to avoid, prescription drugs because of the side effects, and they're willing to take a risk or take a chance with things that are, quote, all natural. Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking supplements. Yeah, most supplements are at the very worst benign. And in many cases, the evidence shows that there are mild benefits to taking various supplements, dietary supplements. The problem is not so much that folks want to take vitamins. Problem is that vitamins are sort of like the one thing that you can pop in your mouth and chew up and swallow, that the government has not necessarily okayed as safe for human consumption. Food is one thing. We eat that. That's pretty heavily regulated. Medicine is another thing. That goes into our body often, and that's very heavily regulated. But somehow we've created this third category of things that we ingest that is neither food nor medicine, and somehow does not merit the checking of supply lines. I talked to one supplement salesperson who thought that he was selling an all-natural alternative to a popular pharmaceutical. It was actually his Chinese supplier who was giving him what he was told was a plant extract, was in fact a version of that same pharmaceutical chemical that was in the more mainstream solution for that problem.
Let me read this comment to you, Matt, real quick, because it's on your point. This is from another Matt. I hope you're not also commenting online while you're doing this show, Matt. The companies who offer supplements know they can't meet rigorous FDA standards to prove they're effective. So the game plan became to delegitimize the FDA through sowing suspicion and half-truths. So you referenced this change in the 90s earlier, and I think you're referring to the 1994 Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. So first of all, am I right about that? That's what you're referring to. But could you also
Absolutely,
explain
yes.
what that is, and at the time, what it was designed to do?
Yeah, well, at the time, Americans were increasing their usage of vitamins and supplements. The public wanted sort of a more active hand in how to figure out how to navigate that safely. And the supplement industry, which at that time was much less powerful than it is now, successfully lobbied to have a bill drafted that would sort of push back on the FDA's assertion that a supplement had to be safe before you could bring it to market. And so the FDA was forced to, instead of sort of providing that preventive screening, was forced to result to an enforcement position where they would go out and test things that were already in the marketplace, and then if they found a problem, to order a recall. And that's been woefully ineffective. They're not only simply overwhelmed, but even when they order that a recall happens, studies have shown that those same products are on the shelf with those same adulterants up to 2 years later.
Yeah, you wanted to jump in here, Dan.
I would, because all correct, but just as big of a problem and an even more powerful lobbying group is the food industry itself. So when we talk about food and food being regulated by the FDA, what's allowed to be in our food? That's a big topic of debate right now. And the highly processed foods that are very much a part of the American diet, more so here than anywhere else in the world, contribute to the diseases and illnesses more than almost anything. So we have a real problem with our food, and that's a powerful lobbying group. That's a group of people who push back very hard every time they try to be regulated in any way. There are all kinds of chemicals and chemical processing that goes into the common foods that we eat. And there are things in our food supply that don't even exist in many other countries because they're simply not allowed in. This is something that people are beginning to shine the spotlight on and should. Everything from how toxic our food dyes, probably more than any of the supplements that are on the shelves right now. And so to focus on where there's problems with supplements, but not think about the bigger problem, in my opinion, of food is a problem in itself.
And I think this is why Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been able to ascend into power, because a lot of people do agree with him on that, even though some of his other claims people agree with less. By the way, our question for our audience is this: do you use alternative medicine? And why do you think it has become so popular? You can call 888-477-9499, email studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, be sure to keep those comments coming in the chat. I want to bring in a caller. We have Robert from Roxborough on the line. Robert, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
I think this is Paul, by the way.
Paul, I'm sorry. Paul from Roxborough.
Yes, hi. My comment is I believe that alternative medicine needs to work hand in hand with modern medicine. You know, everyone is different in regards to how they take care of themselves. And I think part of that, lends itself to a responsibility that you have to do right by yourself. Unfortunately, that's easier said than done. And, there are so many outside forces or influences that determine those decisions. I am not necessarily against supplements, but I think, more people respond to a handful of pills than they do what they need to do for themselves, which is, change your diet, physical exercise, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
I think you probably agree with a lot of that, right, Dan Monti?
I would say bravo, Paul, for that excellent point. And, that's why we at Jefferson created the first ever academic department of integrative medicine and encourage others to around the country and the globe, because we have to be guided by all of the terrific science of conventional medicine, but then think about where we can add value beyond what we're already doing, and where we can think about where things have been missed in terms of nutrition, lifestyle, and integrate them back into the medical model.
Well, so let me ask you about that, because I go to the doctor, I go to my, primary physician, and I guess I'm struggling to understand the perspective of people who are like, doctors only push pills. Because I go get my physical, I'm reasonably healthy, but I have high cholesterol. My doctor's like, eat more fruits and vegetables. She's never pushed a pill on me. I don't know if that's unusual, but in all my experiences with the system, it's just my experience, they always talk about diet. They're always like, you have to exercise more, you have to do more diet. And then I hear from the other side, oh, they don't care about that at all. They never talk about diet. All they want to do is give you a statin or whatever. You're in this field, Dr. Dan Monti, help me understand this idea that all doctors do is push pills, because it's just not been my experience.
This is a great point, because I think that the climate is changing. And so I don't know if you have a more recently trained physician or because I hear both experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the issue, that we're in a transition right now where there's more and more understanding of these things like diet, nutrition, lifestyle, stress reduction that affect health and outcomes, and that are being brought into that medical training and that medical model. But not everybody has glommed onto it yet. Not everybody has embraced it yet. So what you get are highly varied experiences of patients. And so yours is a great one, but you've heard of some of the other ones.
Yeah, and I've had people want to put me on prescriptions, but I asked what alternatives are available. And by the way, I kind of want to talk about some of the real world consequences of these alternatives, because, I've read that herbal and dietary supplements are causing liver damage with mounting prevalence now. they've a 2017 review in the Journal of Hepatology found that 20% of liver toxicity cases nationwide are tied to these supplements. Can you talk about that a little bit, Dan? I mean, are we seeing people sort of take matters into their own hands? Maybe they don't want to take prescription drugs, but they go online and find a remedy and then start taking turmeric, for example, or fill in the blank, and are finding problems with that.
See, that's exactly the problem. And that's why it's so important that we have good information out there. The issue is the supplement industry, as our other very smart guest, correctly noted, has moved fast. And so people have access to all of these things. And so they're self-prescribing some of these supplements and oftentimes thinking, well, it's natural, so more is better. That's often where we see the toxicity. People take very large amounts of these things because even if the bottle says 1 to 2 capsules, well, it's natural. And I want to get this cholesterol number down in your case.
Right.
And so they take 4, 5, 6. You might be somebody in my office who I look at your lipid profile and say, if you're not getting enough omega-3 fatty acids in your diet, I might recommend one. But I'd be very thoughtful about how much, which brand, which version of it. And then I'd be looking at your labs ongoing. That isn't what's happening out there when people are sort of self-prescribing and using as much of something as they want.
Let's read this comment in from Akram. By the way, questions today. Do you use alternative medicine? Why do you think it's become so popular? And this is a really interesting theory from Akram on YouTube. Who says, this might be a tad heavy-handed, but I think the information age has ushered a general lack of humility about knowledge or lack thereof, especially among the educated and well-to-do. It's one thing to turn to alternative medicine out of necessity due to finances, but it's an entirely different thing to believe that a simple Google search makes us smarter than experts. That's a lot to chew on, but let me get you back in the conversation, Matt. One thing I wonder when we hear from federal officials like RFK Jr., the war on alternative medicine is over. Like, my brain goes to, what does that really mean? Like, I wasn't aware there was a war to begin with, but like, what doors could be opened conceivably to alternative medicine? And then what are the potential downstream effects of those doors being opened for good or for worse?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we need a lot more people like Dr. Monti in the system because a lot of the problem is sort of when you were talking about sort of like arrogance and lack of humility rising up, I thought that was going to be critiquing sort of like the culture of physicians.
Doctors, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's sort of like a rejection of expertise, which has been a really endemic component of this populist movement that has sort of gotten with the alternative health movement. But I think that there needs to be more integrative care. I think that if the government ought to take more of a hand in the supplement industry and in sort of like affirming that certain supplements are needed and good, and sort of create more stakeholders within the industry who don't have such a stake in tearing down the medical system because it's been sort of like subsumed into the medical system. The problem isn't that people ought to eat. I'll agree that the problem is that more people ought to eat their fruits and vegetables and get healthier food. My experience has been similar to yours, Avi, and that my physician is, hooking me up with nutritionists. And have you ever eaten the food in a hospital? It is disgustingly healthy for you. But the folks who the problem is that it's a fairly basic set of recommendations. There's a one sheet that exists that will tell you everything you need to know about a healthy diet. But there is a sort of this capitalist drive to brand and monetize a system that is in accordance with that one sheet. And in order to do that, you have to make sort of increasingly extreme claims to make yourself stand out. And people like Dr. Monti are not telling people with cancer to try to treat it with, cabbage juice. He has the training to sort of accommodate the desire for all natural living and balance that with the medical recommendations that will extend someone's life. And I think to the extent that Dr. Monti is approachable
Yeah.
to the public, that believes in such things, this is what we need.
By the way, I want to bring in a caller because I think their comment kind of touches on what you just said, Matt. We have Jenny from Landenberg, Pennsylvania on the line. Jenny, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
My comment is I'm a registered dietitian who's worked for years in outpatient oncology with patients under treatment. Many of these people come in very desperate for an answer to, to getting better and being better and finding this and that to help their cancer, and they turn to supplements. And it's been very difficult to try to talk some of these people out of, even a close friend of mine. And her friend was trying to sell her juice stuff. I don't want to name names, but it was just, to me, it's just unacceptable. There's no evidence behind this, and they'll turn to things that could actually hurt them while they're under treatment, especially. So just wanted to bring that population in. We have a vulnerable population of older people, young people that want to live forever, and on and on.
Thank you.
That's it. I could go on forever, but thank you.
Thank you.
Great
That's
call.
Jenny from Landenberg, Pennsylvania. And on the other side of this break, because we're coming up on a break now, we want to talk about that. Some of the more serious issues, some of the more serious, diagnoses that people are seeking herbal supplements, all natural treatments for, and some of the unscrupulous, I guess, sales folks who are preying on these individuals on the other side of that call. And our question for you this hour is, do you use alternative medicine? And why do you think it has become so popular? We hope you call in on the other side of the break. Welcome back to Studio 2. I'm Cherry Gregg.
And I'm Avi Wolfman-Arendt. We are talking about why more Americans are turning to alternative therapies and cures online, some untested and unproven, and why people have become distrustful of conventional medicine and the pharmaceutical industry.
And let me reintroduce our guest. We have Dr. Daniel Monti, founding director and CEO of the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at Jefferson Health. We also have journalist Matthew Hungelt-Hetling. He's the author of The Ghost Lab and If It Sounds Like a Quack, A Journey to the Fringes of American Medicine. And for you, our listeners, our question of the day is this: do you use alternative medicine? And why do you think it has become so popular? You can call 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, be sure to drop those comments in the chat.
Nick says, I've been using alternative medicine for 40 years. Depending on your needs and the practitioner, you may or may not feel better. Also, traditional medicine is failing me in several ways. There's no yellow brick road in healthcare. Roberta on YouTube says, my husband and I are lucky to have a long-term relationship with an open-minded physician. But here's the question, Dr. Daniel Monti. How open-minded should we really be? Because RFK Jr. has talked about the food supply, processed foods, all that stuff, a lot of which traditional medicine and practitioners agree with. But he's also brought up things like stem cells treatments, vitamins, peptides, chelation therapy, and you can go even further afield. Can you help us understand what in that world might have something to it and what is pure bunk? Because for a lot of us, it's very confusing right now.
It's super confusing. I think about the average person out there trying to navigate all of this and how difficult that has to be, because sometimes things come up that are difficult for me to navigate, and I have to take an hour to really look at the literature and understand what's going on. There are a lot of different things out there, and I think the problem is the term alternative medicine. I think that as soon as we disconnect any of these therapies from the medical model, that's when we have a problem.
Why is that a problem?
Because to do something in isolation of the medical model sometimes is at the expense of the well-being of the patient. You first have to make sure that you don't have an acute medical problem that requires a conventional medical intervention that we know works, like those original things we talked about.
A broken leg or something like
right,
that.
where conventional medicine is proven, or to our previous caller, a tumor. You know, I've had the patients she's talking about where the woman comes in with a lump on her breast and says, you know, can I try to heal this with diet and maybe supplements? And I say, you know, diet and supplements will be great for after. We'll start with diet to get you as healthy as possible for that lumpectomy and the rest of the traditional oncological care that you need. And then we'll talk about an integrative model where we bring in to the conventional model things like diet, nutrition, maybe targeted use of supplements, maybe not. Depends upon her unique genetic profile and biochemistry to really become a stronger, better version of herself.
But can I circle back here real quick? Because it seemed like what you were saying at the beginning was the problem is calling it alternative medicine, and reading between the lines, I'm thinking because that alienates people, or because it makes it seem like there's two completely separate things, that there's no bridge between them. And then you end up with patients who are like, I do alternative medicine. Others are like, I wholly trust the traditional system. And people get what, in a silo or something?
That bridge. We need that bridge. My life is that bridge, right? That's what I've created. That's what I keep trying to create across the country, across the globe. Because when we have conventional medicine and then alternative medicine, then we're going to have people who get hurt in the middle, because they disconnect from the conventional medical model sometimes when they absolutely need it.
So you're saying that you could do a lumpectomy, right? For example, to treat the breast cancer or the tumor, but at the same time use some alternative treatments to help with that as well. You can use both.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can use nutrition. You can use acupuncture, which has been shown to help people weather the storm of oncological care. So there's all kinds of things that can be used in harmony with primary oncological care, primary medical care. The issue is when you use any of those things at the exclusion of the medical care that's needed.
So I guess the question I have then is, are we building that bridge just because we don't want to alienate people? It's almost like a sales pitch to them. Don't leave us. Or is it because those things are additive and work?
They're additive and work. We know this. We know there's plenty of studies to show that many groups of people benefit from some of these things if they do them, particularly when they do them along with standard medical care. Everything from mindfulness-based stress reduction that improves the outcomes of almost everything.
Sure.
We have one of the biggest programs in the country at Jefferson. Why? Because we know that it works. Nutritional strategies. Those things work. There's been studies to show that for cognitive decline, for example, you can stop it, even reverse it in some cases with the right types of dietary interventions and lifestyle interventions. So we know these things work. But the minute we sort of only go to alternative medicine And then who are these people that are only practicing alternative medicine? I don't know. Are they non-credentialed people? They can be anybody saying, take this herb, take this supplement.
Can I ask one more question, though?
Yeah.
Well, can I just have one more question? So I guess I'm trying to imagine someone on the other side of this debate saying, we need these categories because it clarifies for people, this is the body of things we know works, and we've proven it, and here's the body of things that there's just less sort of like conventional evidence to support, and we need to categorize these things for people, for the customer, for the patient.
Complementary.
Yes.
So I see them as complementary, adjunctive, versus alternative. Alternative says it's an exclusion of this one.
Mm-hmm. I want to read a couple comments before I throw in a question to you, Matt, because because I know that Matt, and let me just read this comment. Tony says on YouTube, one of the issues may be that medical doctors prescribe a manufactured drug for every small issue reported to them. One pill side effects lead to another pill with more side effects. Bros Fan says on YouTube, there is no federal law that controls the use of the term natural. Any manufacturer can claim that a product is natural or hypoallergenic no matter what is actually in the product. And Matt, I wanted to bring you into the conversation because you've done some extensive reporting on individuals who used alternative treatments for things where there is a standard of care in traditional medicine, and cancer is one of them, and the results were not positive. Can you talk about those, give us an example of that, and explain what happened here and how the individuals were able to lure those folks away from more traditional treatments?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been talking a lot about a woman that I met, a lovely woman named Dawn Callie from California, mother of four. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 1, easily treatable, with a surgery and follow-up treatment. And she was very much an alternative medicine, all natural living type of person. And she feared going through conventional treatment. And so she looked around for other answers. And a very common story that I think a lot of people will be familiar with. She connected with an alternative practitioner, a naturopath, who gave her a course of treatments that was totally ineffective over a course of years. He tried to help her deacidify her body. And all this time she's focused on deacidifying and thinking that she's doing better. A few years go by, and now her cancer has advanced to stage 4. So she's driven back to conventional care by some back pain, finds out that the cancer is metastasized, spread throughout her skeleton, and put her in a very, very bad position, medically speaking. And at that point, she finally underwent conventional care, but it essentially robbed her of the ability to live long enough to see her children mature into adulthood. She lasted several years longer. I was very saddened and surprised when I reached out to her for a follow-up to my initial story about her and learned that she had passed. And this is an all too common story. And this is exactly what Dr. Monti was saying about, to do one to the exclusion of the other is part of what is so problematic. But I will also say, Avi, I think that you really put your finger on something earlier. In the conventional medical circles, they will say, if there's evidence for medicine, then it is not alternative medicine. It just becomes medicine, right? As soon as there's a body of evidence that can demonstrate that to the satisfaction of the medical establishment, they start to adopt those protocols. And I hear Dr. Monti talking up the benefits of some treatments that work, mindfulness exercises and nutrition and that sort of thing. These are the things that the conventional system has already embraced, and maybe not perfectly in every corner, but by and large, these are the treatments that you can get from your local hospital. They're included in part of the counseling. And I'll give one just extreme example that I think really what we need to do is that marketing pitch that you were talking about, Avi. We need to speak to people's spiritual side and their ethics and their morals and their sense of well-being. In the Muslim world, if you go into a clinic, you might report on a very commonly accepted phenomenon there of being possessed by a jinn, like what we might call a genie here. And those folks in those clinics, those medical professionals have a toolkit to treat people for jinn possession that will involve a spiritual treatment at the same time that it sort of Trojan horses some more conventional treatments in there for what might be going on from the Western perspective, which might be, signs of mental distress, persistent anxiety, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is an example of a really successful bridge. The medical professionals need to be able to help everybody, not just the people who are pre-positioned to trust them.
Right.
And maybe we can get a couple callers in back to back. We have Shakira from Trenton, New Jersey on the line. Shakira, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
Yes, I wanted to make 2 points. First of all, I am a user of alternative medicines. I've been using treatments that in some cases where they were the alternative medicines, specifically essential oils in one episode and supplements in another episode. Those were the only things that worked. And I had gone to numerous pulmonologists. I've been an asthmatic all of my life, and I'm 71.
Yeah.
So in a couple of cases, alternative medicines were the only thing that really saved me. The other point I wanted to make is that our pharmaceutical industry here in the U.S. has failed us so miserably. They have so many times they have provided medications on the market that really have done us harm.
Yeah.
And they've just sucked up money, endlessly.
Yeah.
And Shakira, we're going to have to leave it there because we only have a couple minutes, but Shakira makes a really strong point here.
But building off that, actually, because we are basically out of time, let me ask you, Dr. Daniel Monti, I think this is a huge challenge for people in your field. Once the patient believes that the medical establishment, call it big pharma, whatever term you wanted to use, has an incentive structure that hurts them, that is built to maybe keep them sick. You hear this from people all the time. Big pharma is trying to keep me sick. Big pharma is just trying to make money. Once they don't believe that you or people in your field have their interests at heart, I feel like that's often where the trust completely breaks down. So how do you speak to that person who comes in and says, I don't trust big pharma, big medicine. I think that they are trying to harm me?
I think by having the kind of experience that you have with your primary care doctor, by having the kind of conversations with people that meet them where they are, and by doctors increasingly understanding the kinds of things that we're talking about, where there's benefit to adding those kinds of things, so that the patient doesn't see them as simply a pusher of the pharmaceutical industry products. I have increasingly been inundated by the kinds of questions we're getting on this show by people in such a way that I've been now focused on how do I help the average person out there that isn't coming, into our clinic. And that's why I'm more involved with coming on shows like this, even creating my own YouTube channel where I interview people just on these kinds of topics all the time. Like, what is detox? How should I think about supplements? When do supplements make sense? All of these kinds of things, because it's hard to get it all from your doctor. And if I could promote it at Dr. Dan Monti as my YouTube channel where I have a lot of this information, but I don't do it for any self-benefit. I'm not making any money off of it. There's no product behind my channel.
Yeah.
We do have to wrap things up, so I just want to thank you both. Dr. Daniel Monti is Founding Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Markets Institute of Integrative Health at Jefferson Health. Thank you for your time today, Dan.
It's a pleasure.
And Matthew Hongoltz-Hetling is journalist and author of If It Sounds Like a Quack, A Journey to the Fringes of American Medicine. Matt, thanks so much for your time. And let me
It's been a blast. Thanks, guys.
And Lisa says, I'm an OBGYN in the Philly suburbs. The amount of time I spend dispelling fake news from TikTok and Instagram influencers in my daily interactions with patients is shocking. Women have been told that the answer to all their problems is balancing their hormones, but do not want to exercise, quit alcohol, focus on stress or sleep. Interesting perspective from Lisa.
Yeah, and we could have a whole other show on the influence of social media on health, and we'll have to do that another day. But thank you so much to our producers, Debbie Builder, Paige Murray Bessler, and Andreas Copes. Mike Schiffler is our visual producer. Al Banks and Tina Calicay engineered today's show. Our executive producer is Kevin McCory. From Studio 2 here at WHYY in Philadelphia, I'm Cherry Gregg.
And I'm Avi Wolfman-Arent. Thanks for joining us for our first Monday of Studio 2. A lot of callers I know we couldn't get to, but keep on calling. We want to hear from you every Monday after this. You're listening to Studio 2.
Tomorrow at noon, a recent $2.8 billion settlement will bring a major change to college sports. Student athletes can now get a share of revenue directly from their schools on top of potential outside brand deals and scholarships.
We'll talk about this latest update in the battle over compensating student athletes and the many legal challenges that could result. It's a heated topic, and we want to hear from you. Email studio2@whyy.org and join us back here tomorrow, Tuesday, for Studio 2. Coming up next, it's Here and Now.